call the Ordinance Committee meeting to order at 5:39 p.m. So sorry about the 9-minute delay, folks. We'll open with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Any adjustments to the agenda? Okay. Public to speak on non-agenda items? Do. And review of minutes. Looks like we have 2 sets.
Yeah. And they look accurate.
I'll entertain a motion. I move to accept minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. And then, I'm so sorry, was that for all, Nancy, for both sets?
Yes.
And the second was for both, so.
Perfect. Sorry about that, Marty. Okay, correspondence, we don't have any. And continued business. Diving right into the alternative energy ordinance. Did everybody have the opportunity to kind of pull together the notes and changes that they'd like to see?
Yeah, generated a lot of questions.
Okay,
2 things in the minutes I did note. Solar energy systems are not in chapter 38's land use table. So that's something that we'll probably need to propose to planning board for them to approve and go forward with.
So you're talking about under on page 1204.
Correct. And at the very back of your planning board packet is the document that Val brought to me for the Birmingham language.
perfect, okay.
Is this the one with Rockland? That has the burning language.
Page 3, I saw that.
But they need to have anything more than that, or just, then that's at the discretion of the homeowner or lot owner or whatever.
Where's the burning language in?
She
On
put
page
it
2.
on page 2, she circled it at the very top with walk, Rockland.
Okay.
Just in case someone else, you know. If I wanted to put bamboo and someone else wanted to put pines and
Well, I
whatever.
have some questions about some of this, though. I went through and generated a lot of questions. So,
Okay, so do you want to target the questions to each section so that it's
Yeah.
clear for the minutes?
Yeah.
Perfect, so let's go ahead and I'm stealing this note.
if I can start with just a general question.
Okay,
We differentiated between, in the solar, we talked about personal versus commercial versus industrial. We have no real differentiation that I can see in wind. Other than on the page. We talk about how many acres on where is it? Okay, on page 1204, it says 1 lot, it talks about 10 kilowatt or 50 kilowatt, but we really don't differentiate between whether a person is using it for personal use or a farm, or they're actually putting a wind farm in. Yeah, I do not see that broken out in our document like we did with solar. And I think we're gonna run into some problems if we don't make a cleaner differentiation in our document.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand.
Well, under the solar, we have listed for personal use, for commercial use, or for industrial, which is selling it back.
What page are you on?
That's just throughout the document, that's how the solar is done. With wind, we do not differentiate, we just talk about a wind system, and so there's no differentiation other than on 1204 where it talks about 10 kilowatts versus 50. That's the only differentiation. And yet there are things in here which talk about wind farm. So, you know,
Okay,
I'm saying, I'm thinking we need to be a little more precise with our language here too.
If I may, the differentiation of private versus commercial and industrial, that's a state definition of those two different types of programs, that wasn't something that we came up with,
Okay, right, right.
so.
Is there any, that was for the solar, is what you're saying?
Correct.
What I'm asking for is, I would like us to do something similar. If the state doesn't have it, I think we should do something the same way so that we don't have this, well, you know, what were they talking about? You know, this type of deal, whether we set it up as there seems to be an attempt at on 1204, they talk about a 10 kilowatt versus a 50 kilowatt. Okay, we can define it by kilowatts, we can define it by usage, but I think there has to be some way to differentiate the different types.
And do you have proposed language to that effect?
I was thinking, if I don't know if the state has it, but I was thinking we should, a person, you know, we could use the same descriptors, the personal, which is just for home use. Commercial, which is something like, say, a farm, they're using it on the property for more than, you know, workshop. Or industrial, which is i.e. a wind farm, but you may change the titles, you may call it two uses, you have personal and wind farm, you know, one being on property and one being sold back to the grid. Again,
Okay.
I don't know, I'm just saying, I think we probably need to think in those terms, I don't know how that works out, I just came across it today, and like, oh, okay, we don't really have a definition there.
okay, so just so I'm clear, so when we're like looking at on 1204 where it says placement and we're talking about solar energy and then it gets into wind systems. And then we're talking about standards and restrictions, the setback, we speak about solar, and then we go into wind systems. You're just saying, I just want to be crystal clear, that it's not specifically saying, say, for example, setback for residential would be 25, you know, we haven't defined
Right.
the definition of what a setback for a residential versus a setback for a commercial. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just then the use, I mean, that you see there's different, if you look at the solar, the presses has different things, the commercial is different, you know. And so, I mean, you think about it, a person putting in a single windmill, like, I'll use the church, because that's the only I can think of in town, that's not really personal, that's more commercial, because it's. But they're not selling it back to the grid, but someone who wants to build a wind farm, so maybe we differentiate, you know, and call it I don't know what the proper terminology would be, I'm just saying, I think we need to somehow differentiate in our document that, you know, a wind farm versus a personal use versus a, you know, again, I apologize, I don't have a way to frame that, but I think we need to look at
Well,
that.
and I think we need to have kind of a starting point of how to frame it so that we don't burden Marty with trying to find that.
And I
information.
agree.
So if there is somewhere that we can look for, I mean, I'll take a look at some of the other ones. We did have those, the starting documents, which were pretty significant that we kind of smashed into this one.
Right, yeah.
And it may have that language in it. I see Marty's looking at the state statute now about the shooting
This
statute.
is actually something else that's put out by the government, but the size of wind turbine you would need for residential can range from 20 watts to 100 kilowatts.
Right.
The smaller or micro turbines are used in a variety of applications.
Right. We could let this document.
So I'm going to send this to myself and forward it to you guys that way. Okay.
The other thing is, wind turbines are only 15 to 50% efficient depending, so even though it says it's rated at say 10 kilowatts. You're not gonna get 10 kilowatts out of it. So that's why the home ones vary so much in size.
Okay, so we can collectively come up with language to identify commercial versus personal use for wind.
Right, that was just a, you know, like I
Perfect,
said,
okay,
so.
I would like, if we did, I have down 3 areas, residential, commercial and farms. Just like we have solar farms, we've
Right.
had
A wind
solar
farm.
wind farms. So those.
But wind farms would be commercial.
or they'd be industrial, if you go
Yeah,
by
I
this,
think
they'd be
that's the way it
industrial.
is.
They'd be
Yeah.
industrial.
Yeah.
So that's three, industrial, because that's not, a commercial would be, again,
The
using
church.
Scott's example, church.
A farm,
Residential
something
would
bigger.
be someone's
Right.
home. And commercial would be a church or a business and
business.
industry. Or industrial would be like, it's the 14 acres of windmills.
Right. Yeah, so
Yes.
I didn't know if we wanted to stay with the same type of definition.
Okay,
you know.
so we will come up with language
Okay.
to identify the differences in that.
Thank you.
You have several more points to make and so many more questions, so let's roll from,
Okay,
if we can kind of
Yeah.
condense what we're.
Yeah.
What we're trying to work on, so we know that we are going to work on language to identify the difference between the different stages of the winds. To
Yeah.
essentially mirror the different identifiers that we've put in place
Yeah.
for the solar.
right,
Perfect, okay, next.
1203. Wind, look under definitions, it says a wind energy system and a wind turbine. There's really not a whole lot of difference between them, and the reason I'm asking this is when you carry over, it talks about it seems like we're defining wind energy systems and wind and turbines as interchangeable, and yet throughout the document, sometimes can a wind energy system be more than one turbine? And there are some places in the document it seems to infer that, and there are other places where it seems to infer that a wind energy system is a single turbine, but we never really expressly state that. That's why I'm, so if you look at those definitions, a wind energy generation system is a wind turbine, the tower and associated control or conversion electronics. Wind turbine, the blade rotors, associated mechanical and electrical conversion components, including the component towers. So it's like, there's really not a whole lot of difference between those two. And that's why, are these state generated definitions or are
These
these?
are the definitions that were taken from the.
From the other
ordinance
one.
that were
Yeah.
taken.
So I would recommend perhaps we tweak those and the wind energy system being, turbines and everything included, and can be multiple turbine, because let's say a person puts 3 turbines to make up to 10 kilowatts. Again, that's gonna depend on how we define a personal, a commercial versus, are we gonna say a wind farm is more than 1 turbine? Those all kind of depend on that.
So can you identify the exact page and sections that you're looking at,
Yes.
having some clarification on the
So
definitions?
1203 is that, those things.
Which
Then-
things, please identify the.
1203, those wind energy system and the wind turbine.
So section 4, 2,
Well, it's under the definitions, it's
Section.
section 3, I'm sorry, section
no,
3
so which
definitions.
page are we looking?
We're looking at 1203,
Oh, well, three in the
and
middle.
under wind energy system and wind turbine.
Okay,
They are what I'm saying is there's hardly any difference between them. And so they're like, okay,
all right, so wind energy,
and I'm sorry to be a pain, but I'm trying to make
No.
this as clean as we can so that we
and
don't.
that's all I'm trying to do
Get
for the
back.
purpose of the record.
Yeah.
So wind energy system and wind turbine, we're gonna work on those definitions.
Yes, please.
Any suggested changes to those definitions that you have?
I would gonna say that the wind energy system, it should be broader. The wind energy system consists of the wind turbine and all of the associate, wind turbine or turbines, depending on how you define it, right? And then the
Right.
wind turbine is that which actually generates, and just there's a, but unfortunately, sometimes they get used a little bit interchangeably throughout the document, and that's why I'm asking for the clarification. I don't want to have.
I would recommend that we look at the Town of Freedom Wind Turbine Ordinance, and they've got some definitions on page 5 and 6
Okay.
of our packet, and it talks about what they describe as a wind turbine and what they, wind turbine classifications. They have small, intermediate, and large, and industrial wind turbine, which could be what we're saying is a system.
Right.
And that was the town of what?
Freedom, Town of Freedom Ordinance, pages 5 and 6. Look at their definitions and see if we want to adopt those.
Okay.
Okay. And next, Scott?
1204, the next page. As I said, under the wind systems, it seemed like we were using, because the way it reads, on lots half acre up to 5 acres, one wind energy system, 10 kilowatts or less. And that's where it seems to be using wind energy system and wind turbine interchangeably, see what I'm saying? Because what if I had 2 turbines that equal 5 kilowatts each, I'm still within that, but are we trying to say, you know, that's why I'm saying it seemed a little bit.
Yeah, I think they're interchanging their.
That's what I think they were, and then, so, you know, are we saying one system is one turbine? And is this how we're gonna be subdivided in categories? I mean, that's why it all ties together. The definitions. And I just want, like I said, I want to avoid confusion down the road. I want to create this, set it out and be done with it.
Haha, very funny. That's
I-
never
I
how
know.
ordinances work.
But
But
Screen.
good thought, good thought.
that's kind of what's driving, you know, because like I said, there seem to be interchange.
All right.
Next
perfect.
page 1205, under energy systems 2.c. And again, here's where they seem to be interchanging wind turbine and wind energy. Approval to build or operate a wind turbine or wind energy system applies only to the portion. So, you know, then it says the entire wind energy system across all municipal boundaries. So are they, you know, it's just like, okay.
I really think they're saying about size, if we would look at these definitions on the freedom one, but that would be us for us to make that call.
Right, but until we have that in
Right.
our language, as I read that, it's like, okay, they seem to be using them interchangeably, but then they go the entire wind energy system, so that would imply more than one turbine, you know, that's what I'm saying, that's why I'm a little
So
bit.
if it, for an example, approval of a building or operate of a small turbine or a large wind system, you know, to define. be
Exactly.
clearer.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll stick with the wind energy for now, because unless you want to just go on the solar 1205, same page down at the bottom, 1205.
Okay,
Why a difference? The Pressus was 35 dBA. And the Cessus and the Isis were 55 dBA. In the research I was doing, there are really very little noise associated with these unless it's a motor mount, you know, tracking the sun, or on a Pressus, a roof mounted system, sometimes the wind goes underneath, you know, but so we've got 35, the house is to be 35, but the commercial is 55, and yet it's not like you have a lot of noise generating components, so why the difference in the.
because it was by majority vote of the board. So.
Well, I just.
No,
I figured
valid
that was
question, but
pretty-
that's what happened. It was a majority vote. So that change was made by majority vote of the board.
Right, and I'm not saying I disagree with 35, but I'm just saying that if.
No, I'm
I don't
explaining
know
why
why
it's there
I
and I
know why
don't,
they're
yeah.
different.
I
you
think
know.
that was the conversation, spearheaded by Val saying the noise
Yeah,
Right,
within a residential area versus within a, business area.
perfect. Okay.
so I mean, my recommendation would be that maybe we consider making them both the same unless there's a good reason to keep them separate.
There was a valid reason at the time that the majority vote was made. That
Yes.
change has been made by majority of the
Okay,
board.
that's fine. I just, like I said.
Yeah, I'm so
the
sorry. I
read
don't
through-
wanna pull back
No,
what's already been done by vote.
No, I know, but I'm just like I said, as I look at it, it's like, okay, there's a difference here. Next page 1206. Part C and D of wind energy systems.
Mhm.
At the end of C, it talks about 30 days, but the D says 90 days. The current owner of the system, this is the end of C, of the system shall correct the violation, reimburse the town the fee for the noise level measurements within 30 days of notice. D, if the maximum decibel reading, they shall be corrected within 90 days. Okay. Is the 30 days simply referring to how long they have to reimburse the town, or is it talking about I have 30 days to fix it, but then I have 90 days in D, so I have a.
Whole paragraph of C, so you can't, upon complaint of a neighboring resident
And the other one
affected.
says upon installation. Properties exceeding the installation shall be considered a nuisance. So one is talking about when you're installing it.
No, but D says, if anywhere on the complaint's property is exceeded. The installation, so I mean, if it's already installed. And so one place gives me 90
He
days
says
to
if
fix
the
it.
maximum decibel reading anywhere on the complainant's property is exceeded.
Right,
On the complainant's.
The one
property
making
is
the
exceeded,
complaint.
The installation, let me read the paragraph just so we make sure we're all. The installation shall be considered a nuisance and must be corrected within 90 days from the notification of the violation. And if the violation cannot be corrected, the wind energy system shall be removed or relocated.
okay,
Now, C says upon complaint of any neighboring resident affected by the wind energy system sounds. So one almost sounds like it's based on complaint by a neighbor versus something that someone's become aware of. I don't like that it's still using the word complainant.
I'd say it to me, they're,
Upon complaint of a
Yeah.
neighboring resident affected by the wind energy sound. Ambient and maximum permitted sound measurements shall be performed by an agent designated by the code enforcement officer.
CD says anywhere, reading anywhere,
Yeah.
so one
I
could
think the
be
language is very
ambiguous.
inexact, but I think that what this was supposed to be for is if. Say you decide you wanna go against Val. And there's no validity to that complaint, then you would be responsible for paying that within 30 days back to the town. For the complaint not having any not having any validity, the town has to pay for. This person to go out and measure the noise complaint, and there's nothing that was found.
and I get that, but.
That's why I just think it's inexact, but
That's
that's.
because it says the
Any of
current
it.
owner shall correct the violation within 30 days, that's the piece that I'm,
And reimbursed,
Yeah, you know,
you're right.
you know,
I think it's both in there, and it shouldn't be both.
No.
Yeah, I think it's redundant language.
that's what I'm saying, I think we have a conflict between the two
It's
paragraphs.
redundant. They're two exact, it's two exact statements, but
Yeah, I
giving
think
different
the
dates.
one should, maybe if there's no violation found, if there's. That needs to be taken out, that the owner of the property needs to reimburse.
Yeah, why would the owner?
Well,
That's what I'm saying, I think that if it's, so if you make a false complaint.
Right.
You would have 30 days to repay the town for the expenses.
Right, if
But
they
if it's
found
the owner that it actually did have a complaint and it was a valid thing, then they have 90 days to fix it. And repay the town for their.
There you go.
And I think that would be good, but that's not the way it's worded,
Right, it's not worded that, but I think that's how it was intended.
Intended, right, okay.
and that would be a good
So
intention.
just needs to be reworded.
The fee for this service shall be paid by the complainant unless. The maximum decibel level has been exceeded, in which case it will be paid by the owner.
You just need to
See, I
make the
think
language
I think they
similar.
just added so much language in
Yeah.
there. Oh, if it's, the town would pay for it if there was a violation and then the owner of the property has to fix it
Reimburse them,
and pay the town, yeah.
but if Val complained the mine was too noisy and it wasn't, then Val would have to pay the town.
Right, it's the keep down nuisance, you know,
Mhm.
people just.
Just calling to say, hey.
Yeah,
So I think maybe,
I would make a motion that we do one of two ways, let's discuss first.
Nope, we do motion second, then
Okay.
discussion.
Okay,
Okay,
That's fine.
second your motion.
No,
No, we need the motion.
there is my motion.
the motion is this, that we adjust C to address simply an invalid complaint. So C would say, upon complaint, code enforcement, let's see, the agent's report shall be submitted, the fees shall be paid by the complainant unless the maximum permitted fee has been exceeded.
Period.
Yeah,
And
period,
then
yeah,
get rid of, in which case the town shall pay the fee,
yeah, and it, you know,
and then. Should that say the complainant? Of the,
well, it'd be upon complaint of any neighboring resident affected by the wind energy system. Sounds, ambient, and the maximum permitted sound which shall be performed by an agent designated by the code enforcement officer. The agent's report shall be submitted to the planning board for review. The fee for this service shall be paid by the complainant within 30 days. put that within 30 days up there, unless the maximum permitted has been exceeded. In which case the town will pay and pass the cost on, and then we can just come to D, and D would be the 90 days, that way,
That was your motion for C.
yes, for C.
Do I hear a second?
Second,
Okay,
okay, so to be clear, we're saying that. If I have a complaint. And. I go to the town and complain, I don't like the way it's sounding, well, it's too noisy, it's too noisy. The town then goes through the expense to figure out whether it is or not, if it is not, then what you're saying, I pay the town, the complainant. Reimburses the town,
Within 30
but
days.
within 30 days. Okay, but if it does, then the owner of the system. Has 90 days
To fix
to
and
fix
pay.
it and pay.
Right.
So we've combined C and D.
No,
We're separating.
we're separating them.
We're making C strictly about
Right,
complaint.
Complain, so if someone's been, so they just can't really complain, and you're bothering you're wasting the town's resources by doing so. So you better have a valid reason and really believe that it is going to be over it, because otherwise it's coming out of your pocket, the town will give you a bill.
Right.
That's what we're saying, okay,
and you'll have 30 days to pay that,
okay,
that's why I think if
Good.
you move,
okay, perfect.
Yep.
Any further discussion on that motion? Do you have the motion?
I have the motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Thank you.
Perfect.
like I said, it just. to me,
Now,
it's-
I also have a recording. so
I know.
It just seemed that it was, that way, if we left it that way.
And the only reason I'm so diligent about it is because I used to take minutes and I know what a bear it can be to
That's-
try and
that's
get the
That's-
context correct.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that we are doing our best to make sure it's easy for.
so I'll make a motion, that. We change D, that if the maximum decibel reading anywhere on the complaints property has exceeded. Then they have, and is considered a nuisance. They have not, within 90 days, they must correct the decibel to fit within the system.
But is-
They got so many words in here.
Isn't that what it already says?
Yeah, kind of thing.
I would
So
say,
you're making a motion to keep the language in D.
Yeah.
yeah, keep D as it is,
You keep it as it is, but make sure. that-
Do I hear a second?
second.
Okay.
Perfect. Any further discussion on that one? All those in favor?
What do we want to add, I'm sorry,
That's
we just want to add, do we just want to add must be corrected and the cost for the test? Cause that's not, that's not implied there,
It's true, because we took it out.
because we took it out of the upper one,
Yeah, yeah.
it's 90 days to correct and pay for the, correct the
To
flaw.
correct the violation and reimburse the
And
town.
reimburse the town, right, that would be, I would,
So that in essence, what we're saying, that relieves the complainant,
yes.
and it falls on the owner
Falls on the owner,
to
that,
pay back and to correct it within 90 days, and if they cannot, they must remove it.
right, but they're still gonna have to reimburse the town, they're still gonna have to reimburse the town for
Yes.
the cost of the test.
Perfect, so you've got that amended motion
They did.
and amended second. Now, any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Perfect, thank you so much, guys.
Much better.
All right,
Well, I think it'll give us a cleaner document.
no, perfect,
This
that is the intent.
What there?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1206, same page.
Mhm.
I just had a question. I know we added this language last time, under solar energy systems, there shall be no negative visual impact. And I think I understand the intent of that, but my question is, I'm a little. How do you define visual impact? I guess that's a somewhat subjective term. That's my concern. Is there a way that we can objectively define that? Because what may be a negative visual impact for one person may not be for another. That's my only concern with that.
I think that discussion we had, and that's where we put in identified in the Rangeley Regional Comprehensive Plan.
That would be the scenic and natural areas that are defined by the Rangeley Comprehensive Plan. But I don't think that there's any type of definition in there of visual impact.
So to my question earlier, I could put bamboo up, and he could put pine trees up, or I could put just a little potentilla, which doesn't cover anything, to give you yellow flowers.
Right, that's what I'm saying is that, what is I'm just asking that question
Do you
because,
want to define it under the definition?
I think we might want to consider it, because otherwise I can see it opening up some discussions down the road and.
Consider defining visual impact.
Right, or negative visual impact, but anyway.
Okay.
I would say billboard, isn't it? Negative.
And probably most of us would agree with you, but like I said, without an objective definition,
Cause it. Yeah, one for natural areas, it doesn't say that it has to be a natural. Area.
Next page, 1207.
Mhm.
And then these are just some observations or questions, under a precis, okay, solar energy systems. It seems like we're asking for some things which are, I don't know, site location map, and I mean, there's a lot of things in here which, like, it's on. Especially if it's a building mounted precis, we've already said they have to be within, they have to fit all the, if it's freestanding, they have to be in compliance with the setbacks and all of that, so I'm just asking, are we, again,
So a lot of these things are still being asked for any building.
Yes,
okay.
yeah, so it's essentially qualifying.
Okay, and that's fine, that answers my question, it was like, cause that, like I said, do we require people to get permits for, I'm picking a stupid example of Woodstone, right? I mean, if a person's putting it on their roof, a solar panel, and I'm putting a wood stove or a gas, that's, so I'm just, I can see if it's a freestanding one, that's what I'm saying, but if it's one that's on the building itself, and if I remember correctly, the state said we can't tell people they can't do that. I'm just, I don't know, that's,
I think for the purpose of record keeping, it makes sense that these types of things be identified and clearly outlined in the planning office. Or in the code enforcement office.
Yes.
but like I said,
And that's just my.
I agree with the freestanding ones, I just don't know what benefit there is to someone putting it on the roof that we have to have that identified, how is that going to alter anything, I mean, it doesn't change.
It does, it changes their taxes,
And if they're in shoreland, they only have
so many,
Okay.
yeah, I mean.
If there's, I appreciate, that's what I'm,
Yeah.
those are the things that,
Yeah.
are
So-
just,
I think this is to make it equitable for
okay,
all
Yeah.
people, whether you're in residential zone or
Yeah.
shoreland, or you have to, everybody has to provide the same documentation.
and as long as, that's the reason, I'm okay with that, it's just I did not, going through. And I mean, it kind of goes with the number 3, E3, and please just, the owner of the roof shall provide evidence supported by the structures. Now, if I'm putting one up, I'm gonna get a structural engineer to do that, but at the same time, it's like, if the guy doesn't do that, he bears the risk, and if his building comes down, that's, it's sort of a caveat emptor, I'm just,
But if we've approved that permit, they can hold the town responsible for giving a permit for something
Okay.
they shouldn't.
then that I agree with, I mean, that's a valid, but it just,
I think that's probably a cover the town's liability.
then that's fine, because like I said, from the standpoint of me, if I put it up there and my building falls down, that's on me, because I didn't do my due diligence. I'm not the person who's gonna come back and sue the town and say you didn't let me do it, but there probably are those who would, so,
Or you put it up there and it goes flying into the next building, because it
Yeah.
wasn't on strong enough.
yeah. But I'm okay with that, I just wanted to make sure that there was a, reason for it being there. Next ones I have are on 1210, I don't know. if anybody
Say, I
has-
thought I saw you flip twice.
Yeah, well, like I said, I sat down today. Hey,
Figure we'll let Scott run through his and then Nancy.
Nancy,
I'm sorry.
you get the next meeting, because Val ran the last one.
Yeah.
well, I just had a chance to sit down today and go.
No,
through
no,
it.
that's fabulous, that's what we asked for.
It comes
We needed
back
all
to,
this feedback.
on 1210. It's just a practical question, look at number 11, ground mounted. Says this and I says, shall be screened from view by any abutting residential property using, okay, I get that, but. Again, maybe it's the engineer in me, but it's this whole idea of, well, okay. From any abutting residential property, but does that mean I'm up on the second floor of my building? You know, I can see it. And someone looks at this and says, well, I shouldn't be able to see it, or if the property is on, I'm just, okay, I'm being.
No, I get
you
it,
know,
but.
it's built on a hill.
Who are looking at Mark Beauregard's solar farm and I guarantee you, they're probably thinking the same thing.
Right, it's built on the side of a hill, right?
That's where my house is.
And but I'm saying, so I have
See
a,
it.
but let's say, I mean, so it doesn't matter how much I screen it, I can see it, that's why I'm asking this, it just seems like. You know, if we leave this as it sits,
Well, I think this goes back to what Val was wanting with the berming language as well, adding berming in there as well.
right,
But if you have wind, you have turbine, that's how the heck,
those can be up to 100 feet tall.
yeah, that's not reasonable.
You take a solar, if it's built on the side of a hill, I don't care how much of a berm you put around it, you know.
It's not that high.
You're not gonna hide it, or if I'm on the second story of my building, so I think there's some. And I don't have a good answer, I'm just, I can just see this being a bone of contention at some point, and I would like us to think about this, you know, come up with I don't have a proposed solution, maybe other communities have done something differently, I can do some more research, but like I said, that's one of those things that, you know, came up in my,
Trees shall be screened from view by any abutting residential property using vegetated topograph and or fencing. To the best of ability, and then can we say, I'm just trying to.
from ground level.
No,
I was thinking, put in some kind of language about it being at ground level.
Background level, or, and I was gonna say, and or at, with abutters approvals. Because then you don't have complaints.
Whoever's living there at the time that they said yes to it.
But somebody else, yeah. But I mean, I think.
That's a fabulous thought
Do you
process.
want someone else having the right to say yes or no for your property?
If something like that's going to affect them, because
Ground
I'm like,
limits
let's say
assessments shall be
courtesy
screened
highway.
from view. Shall be screened from ground,
From Christine from
shall be screened from ground view.
yeah, from view, well, should be screened from view on the ground level or something like that, street level, or street, I think just something like that needs to be in there because. To the best ability, because like I said, if you have a sloping lot,
Mhm.
you can't screen what's up there, you can only screen the lower. And that's, unless you're gonna put, you know, tall trees in, and then you're gonna hinder the whole solar effect, so.
Okay, so we know we wanna change that language, we just don't know how we wanna say it yet, so
Yeah.
that's not gonna,
not gonna-
perfect,
just
okay?
move on, I think moving over to 1211, again, it's just a question. I'm gonna look at on section E, I'm sorry, not E, under wind energy, H and I, take those two. And again, this comes back to a utility contract would, G would probably only apply if we can define our terms better, you know, we would then change that to say if putting in a wind farm or something, then you know, and it's sort of implied there, but nevertheless, but aerial photographs for a personal, you know. They've had to get a tax map, they've had to do, you know, I mean, so, you know, I'm just asking.
So maybe once we have the definition of versus residential versus commercial, then we can readjust.
Right, I mean, I can see if you're putting in a commercial system, or I mean, you know, a wind farm and you wanna, but it seems like a lot in here because we're trying to clump it all together, you know, visual analysis, elevation drawings, a graphic mock-up of the proposed system from the 4 cardinal directions, I mean. For someone to put in a single windmill for their home.
Yeah, I think that the wind ordinance that was chosen didn't really have, well, I don't think that it really addressed residential period. I think
Mhm.
this all seemed,
It was most.
it all seemed mostly commercial.
And I understand this for a commercial, that's what I'm saying, until we differentiate, I think some of this is overkill for someone trying to do you know, if they've done all the setbacks and they've met everything else, you know.
that was H and I, you said, right? That you
yes,
think
H.
Essentially overkill for personal.
For
but you're not
personal.
objecting to it.
I mean, I understand if you're gonna put in a major
Perfect.
thing, but if someone just doing, you know.
No, so we'll clean that up when we clean up the definitions.
Right.
Perfect.
1212. Again, yearly renewable bond. Does this apply to a personal as well as a commercial and industrial?
Yeah, I think that this probably was,
But it doesn't say that in our ordinance.
I think this goes back to the commercial
Mm.
use of it rather than.
But I think we should. You know, state that. Because otherwise, it's, you know. And that also applies to
The escrow account.
yeah, escrow account and abandonment,
Abandonment.
you know, because it's like. This site of any alternative energy is subject to a CEO inspection at any given time. So does that mean I have a personal one so you can just come in, you know, it's like that, that's what I'm saying. I think a lot of these apply to. Commercial, industrial type situations, they're not really, you know, same with abandonment. It's not generating electricity for 12 consecutive months.
So do you want to change that first line where it says a yearly renewable bond indemnifying the town, blah, blah, blah. Of the removal of any commercial or industrial alternative energy system with that? Do you think that in both of those, do you think that would help?
Once we define commercial and industrial, yep,
Yeah,
yep, I think they'll be that easy to fit.
right,
I think that.
right, but if we have to have the definitions first, and,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Once we nail down, absolutely, Marty, that they'll be that easy to fix. We'll
I
just.
think that would just be a
Yeah.
plug in.
Like I said, that same thing happens under abandonment, it's that same
Yep.
idea of, you know, okay. So and I think those were it for what I had, thank you for putting up with me, but those were the things that I came up with.
Thank you for putting that much work into it. That's what we need. I'd ask everybody to go back and.
If you're curious, I did do some more digging, I have some definitions of wind turbines and types of turbines and how they generate and. What they call horizontal or vertical, you know, I call them egg beater and
Yeah.
color, but so there's some interesting information. That's where you find out that how efficient or lack thereof. So
Did you want to try and get anything in tonight?
That's okay.
Okay, so next meeting, I promise, is all yours.
yeah, well,
Val had last one, Scott had this one, next one's Nancy.
Scott, if you'd like to, forward me any
mhm,
of those definitions that you'd like to present,
yeah,
please
yeah,
do
I'll do
so.
that.
And you got the town of
Free.
freedom that Nancy mentioned. Perfect,
Page 5 and 6. Yeah.
perfect.
Good.
Nice work. Thank you so much, Scott. Those are some great comments,
Well-
helpful feedback. I think it's.
It took a while.
Yeah. It's supposed to. We're not gonna get this done overnight. It's gonna take time. All right, do we have any new business? No? Yeah. Next meeting. Was there some question about,
That would be like September 6th.
Yes, it is September 6th.
calendar open on that? Is everybody feeling for that one? We know.
School's already started, so
Yeah.
it's not, that's not an issue.
Number 6 works for me.
Yeah, let's do it.
So let's roll with that one, September 6th at 5:30, or as close to it as I can get. No, it'll be September, it'll be over by then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe.
Well, it's after Labor Day weekend, so.
It is after Labor Day.
It'll be over by then. Okay, all right, so next meeting is September 6th at 5:30. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion we adjourn.
Second. All those in favor? Unanimous. In case you needed that information, right? Thank you so much for taking the time to do that.